How are you feeling? You got John Riggs here, ranking games from THQ for the NES. They made 13 of them, and are they any good? Well, we'll find out. Spoiler alert, yikes. Starting off with Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, which features a pretty cool 8-bit chiptune rendition of the classic Attack of the Killer Tomatoes song. Check this out. I mean, the game's kind of interesting enough, and you'll notice a lot of these THQ games kind of look like this a little bit in a way. The fact that it makes a sound for every step you take. I can understand sounds for stopping in your tracks. I can definitely understand a sound for jumping, but there's a sound for every time you walk, every time you take a step, it makes this sound. And that can get pretty annoying pretty quickly. You actually almost get used to it. It happens all the time, you know. Different variations of tomatoes. You basically just have to step on them, just jump on them before they jump on you, before they hit you or something like that. I mean, I don't know. It features a few interesting kinds of things that keep you keep playing, even though you know the game isn't that great to begin with, but it's not terrible. I mean, it has that suck you in factor of like, I gotta get past this part. I at least gotta get past this part, right? That happens a lot with this game. Like right off the bat, right in this first level, you have to like go in the sewers and go through the mazes and you have to backtrack sometimes and have to go up and down these corridors and stuff like that. You get lost pretty easily. The boss battles, I mean, they can be fun in this game, but still the game as a whole, on one hand, it's a little yikesy. On the other hand, it makes me want to keep playing this game. So for that, I'm gonna give it a C. Because we're kind of going alphabetical, the next one is The Great Waldo Search. Now there is a Where's Waldo game by THQ. We'll cover that later on in this video. Wait till if you've never seen Where's Waldo for the NES, I can't wait to show you. This one, however, is, let's be honest, the better one. Now, I don't think anybody was more of a Where's Waldo fan of the book series than I was in the 90s. I loved those books. I loved them so much. And of course, yes, once you find Waldo, then you can always kind of spot about where he is, so you can go back to it. Not a whole lot of rereadability factor. However, in the back of the book, it also has the, like, hey, on this first page, find all these other crazy random things that are happening in this giant mess of chaos of these pages. And that was actually kind of fun. This game, however, I mean, with the bigger sprites, and I mean, Waldo usually sticks out like a sore thumb in these just because of his color palette and all that. But still, I mean, how fast can you find him in the time allotted? Don't worry about the time, because you'll find clocks everywhere. Now, in the Great Waldo Search, you gotta find not only Waldo, but you also gotta find the scroll. And yes, your dog is in there too. If you click on the dog, you'll do a little bonus round, get some bonus points if that's your thing. I mean, you don't have to do that to complete the game, but it's available to you. There are a few worlds that you can find Waldo in, and there's also a couple levels of difficulty. Of course, there's the easy one, stands out a little bit more. Go to the expert level, he'll kind of stand behind some of the characters, but still, he stands out pretty quickly. I liked the fact, however, in this game, they included one of my favorite pages of any of the Where's Waldo books, where they're all Waldo, with the land of Waldos, but one of them's missing a shoe, so you gotta find the Waldo with the missing shoe. And I thought that was cool that they included that in this game. In this game. I said it right. And on top of that, every once in a while, the screen will freeze. It'll be like, oh, before you can move on, you gotta find this other really weird thing. You know, you click on it and you move on. So it's kind of cool that they throw in a couple of those features too. Again, not the best game, but it's, again, it's better than the other one. Wait till you see the other one, but at least this one, I'm actually gonna give it a C. Well, we have Home Alone, and this game did come out for the Super Nintendo, and this was during a time, and props to THQ, I gotta say up front, props to THQ for releasing games on the Super Nintendo as well as the regular NES, because not everyone had a Super Nintendo maybe at this time. So they were releasing the same game on both systems, or at least the same title on both systems. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But with Home Alone, it's basically the same game on both systems. Super Nintendo, this one's the NES one. Of course, it's gonna have the diminished graphics and all that, but plays kind of the same. And when I say plays kind of the same, I mean they're both terrible, really, when it gets down to it. And this one even worse, because you pick up these items that you can use to thwart the enemies, and no matter what it is, whether it be Hot Wheels cars, or jacks, or marbles, or a light bulb, or anything, they always react the same way. They just fall over. They just fall over and get knocked out for a moment, which will help you kind of escape. No matter what it is, it's the same reaction, right? And this game, it's just, that's all it is. And it's not, I mean, it's kind of not fun. Like, it's kind of like, okay, I get it, but okay, it's, I mean, no. The answer is no. The answer is this game is an F. And same thing with Home Alone 2. Now, Home Alone 2, I think, is a better game. It has a little bit more involvement with this game too. So it actually goes through the levels, linear levels here. You go through, you can like run and slide on your knees just like you can in the movie and everything. Other kind of items that you can pick up and use. But the game, I mean, the enemies are weird, like the suitcases on the first level, the old ladies jumping around and all that. I mean, it's a pretty loony game to begin with in the first place, and a lot of it just involves jumping and stuff like that too. And this game also, for some reason, along with these other THQ games, maybe it's the same sound designer, I'm not sure, but borrows a lot of the same sound effects as Bart Simpson versus the Space Mutants, which was interesting enough. And curious that they made you orange in this game to, I guess, really pronounce your blonde hair. I'm not sure. He could have been blonde with blonde. But I don't know, man. I mean, he is in the world of 80s Crayola crayons, he is a burnt sienna. And this game can be kind of confusing too, because like at the end of the first level, you have to keep tapping the elevator button until the elevator shows up. And it doesn't really tell you to do that. You just kind of have to figure it out, I guess, right? Yeah, just like Adam Korlick, figure it out. Home Alone 2 for the NES. Pretty terrible game, but better than Home Alone, so at least I'll give it a D. Oh, good lord, we're off to a swimming start. Can we climb from here? I guess we'll find out. And if you're already digging this style of video, make sure you're subscribed if you haven't done so already. It increases your chances of the next video showing up on your homepage. Don't want you to miss out. Well, I would say that, but then we're talking about James Bond Jr. for the NES. Man, I wish I would have missed out on this game. No, James Bond Jr. For the Super Nintendo, it's actually kind of fun. I actually kind of enjoyed James Bond Jr. for the Super Nintendo. This one, not the same. Ooh, how can I put it lightly? It feels like a game from Ocean. Well, it was in fact developed by Eurocom, which is a European company. That's why this game just looks European. And I've said that before about a couple of other NES games in the past, but man, if you know that European look, this is right up there. And I just wish it was better. It could have been, but there's so much just random jumping and random shooting, and it just makes it hard to play, hard to look at. I think it's mostly this introduction level. Like if the first level is just a linear, not too much worry, just go through the platform, go through the stage and all that, but it starts you off in this giant kind of like underthing maze where you have to like jump on these trampolines at the right point at the right time and move at the right point at the right time and all that. Terrible first impression. It's one of the worst first impressions of a Nintendo game ever. And it's also, well, I don't know if I'd put it as one of the worst Nintendo games ever, but I am going to put it as an F. Fox's Peter Pan and the Pirates. Now, just like they're making that new Little Nemo game, just like Frankenstein, King Kong, Dracula, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan is royalty free. Anybody can make a Peter Pan game in their own vision. And Fox had the Peter Pan and the Pirates cartoon, which I remember kind of liking. I at least watched it. I think it was because it was on Fox, so I watched anything. In my town, Fox was my channel 3, so to play Nintendo games, it was always on channel 3, so channel 3, Fox was my default channel. I watched everything. And if I wasn't watching something, I was playing something. And in this case, I'd be playing Peter Pan and the Pirates. Not sure why, it's not a great game. Now you play as a kind of, well, you don't have enough sprite base for your character, I think. I think they could have made it a little bit taller, at least to begin with. But you play as Peter Pan as you fight off these pirates. You can float, you have this little flying power, you got your Tinkerbell magic dust or whatever. That does disappear after a while, after you use it for a while, but you can always get more later on too. And it basically just makes you float. Doesn't really make you fly. Just makes you float. It works. The attacking's off, the hit detection is off, even some of the platforming elements and some of the how to get to where you need to go stuff, not great. It is another game. Man, I wish it was better. I had high hopes for this game. Not sure why, but it's a terrible game. I'm also giving this game an F. Can you believe it? The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. Where do you think this would lay on this tier list? Do you have any guesses already? Well, we'll find out if you're right. Now, I grew up watching The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle on Saturday mornings, and when I say I grew up with Rocky and Bullwinkle, I meant I grew up with its reruns, and when I say Saturday morning, I mean it was one of those cartoons that would come on at like 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m., super early, you know, before the actual good cartoon lineup of modern time of the 80s anyway. But I really, really did like The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. The cartoon, I love the variety, love the comedy, love the writing. I honestly think it was a cartoon for adults, but of course it's a cartoon, so kids would watch it too. The video game, however, is not made for anyone. adults or children. It's a terrible game. As Bullwinkle, you can ram people with your antlers, and you can also pick up these bombs and throw them as a weapon if that's easier for you, but it's just easier to ram into enemies for the most part. Nice colors, nice sprites, looks like the cartoon in a way, but again, not a great game at all. And not just because the music gets on your nerves really quickly, it's just a terrible game. And maybe you guessed it right, and if so, congratulations, I also give this game an F. If you're collecting NES games, you're buying the games now, Swamp Thing goes for a pretty penny. I bought this game for $2.99 in about 2001 at a Software Etc. that was liquidating all of their NES games. I paid $2.99 for it. It's worth less than that. Never mind what it goes for on eBay. Terrible game. No, I like the idea of Swamp Thing. I like what Swamp Thing is. I like the creature. I like the lore. I kind of like the backstory, you know, with the stuff that gets on him, and then like the rejuvenation stuff that gets on him, and then to put out the fire, he jumps in the swamp, and then he gets the swamp stuff on him, and that kind of fuses to his whatever it is. Becomes Swamp Thing. Cool idea. I remember watching the movie in the 80s, and then I don't remember much about it, but I remember enjoying it at least. The game could have been great. It really could have been, but it just kind of has that kind of slow, sluggish, you walk around, which makes sense for Swamp Thing, right? But then he punches enemies, and it's not great, and the hit detection's off. I mean, it does have these kind of cutscenes that are a little bit more comic book style. Could have been better. It could have been a lot better. I'm also giving this game an F. Good lord. Well, we have 5 games left on this list. Hopefully it'll bring us back to salvation here. We'll see. We got the Ren and Stimpy, the Buckaroos. Now, you had to have been from the time, and just before the time, to understand how iconic Ren and Stimpy truly was in the early 90s. Because growing up, the cartoons we had were very do the right thing. You know, I mean, a lot of our cartoons had morals at the end of the episodes and stuff like that. And then here comes Ren and Stimpy out of nowhere and surprised everyone with its crazy off-the-wall antics. You know, somewhere between Ren and Stimpy and Beavis and Butthead, we're like, okay, cartoons can be cool too for the older generation. Because there was a time there where even as kids were growing up, they're like, I'm not gonna watch cartoons anymore. I'm a grown kid. This was letting you know it's okay. Cartoons can have a lot of value even no matter how old you get. Ren and Stimpy, one of the best for sure, especially for its time. The game itself isn't terrible. I mean, now they made like 4 games on the Super Nintendo, and I covered those in the Super Nintendo THQ ranking video. Only made one of them for the NES, and this one's the Buckaroos one. This one's, I mean, kind of interesting. It has a little bit of platforming, and also has some shooting stages too, where there's a little bit of shooter. So a little variety to get you going through this Ren and Stimpy game. I mean, of course, the Super Nintendo version's better than the NES one, but the NES one, it's not bad. I mean, it was another one of those, you know, I think both games came out at the same time, so it could accommodate both viewers or both players, depending on if you had a Nintendo or a Super Nintendo. Worked out all pretty good. It's not a great game, but it's worth checking out. I'll at least give this one a D. Videomation was the thing that nobody asked for, but for some reason it got the Nintendo seal of approval. Now, the NES did not have a mouse. It was during a time when, you know, maybe home PCs were starting to become kind of a thing. I mean, it was like the early 90s, so I mean, we weren't quite there yet. You know, but maybe with other applications like a Mario Paint or something like that, or, you know, like the little painting things that you do at school to learn how to use a mouse and all that. Pretty fun. But this is like a painting type device for your NES. And again, wasn't needed, nobody asked for it. I mean, apparently somebody bought it because you see some sometimes at conventions, but I mean, like why? You know, it's called Videomation, and there's a couple of animated things you can do. Like, so you can kind of paint the scenery and then have the baby crawling or the car driving or the girl skipping, or, I mean, pass. It's an F. THQ for the NES had one sports game, and it's Wayne Gretzky Hockey. Now, if you're going to have a hockey game, if you're making a hockey game, Wayne Gretzky's the top name, right? It has to be, especially in the 90s. Wayne Gretzky, I mean, had to be. So if you're going to make a hockey game with a celebrity endorsement, has to be Wayne Gretzky. And the game itself, man, I wish it was better. It's like, it's not terrible. Well, it's not, well, okay, I'll correct myself without correcting myself. It's not terrible. There are so many other better hockey games on the NES. Between Blades of Steel, Ice Hockey, Hit the Ice. I mean, Pro Sport Hockey is a great one as well. In fact, literally every hockey game on the NES is better than this one. And this is the one that carries Wayne Gretzky's name. Well, again, not a terrible game, and maybe it plays a little bit more realistic. Maybe it actually flows a little bit more realistic than the other games. But when I'm playing a Nintendo game, for the most part, I don't want realistic. I want just crazy, you know? I want like the video game hockey. Might be worth checking out for you though. I will give this one a D. Oh man, remember when Saturday Night Live was good? Wayne's World was right around that time when it was definitely worth watching. I was a big fan of Wayne's World. It was one of my favorite skits from Saturday Night Live. Couldn't wait for it. And both movies actually weren't bad either. Now they had two games. They had the Nintendo game and the Super Nintendo game, both of them different. The NES game, because we're talking about NES games here, is really terrible. You know, it's one of those late release NES games, so there's, you know, like limited print run on these things, a little harder to find. Man, you have to really want to collect a full set to actually want to own a physical copy of Wayne's World. I used to have a copy of it too. Man, I'm glad I sold it. So you play as both. You start off with Garth, who goes through, at least the first stage, I'll show you the first stage on this one, goes through the music store, and you have your ray gun, because why not? And that's how you get through. That's how you defeat the enemies and move on to the next stage. And then you play as Wayne. You figure Wayne's World, you'd start off with Wayne, but what are you gonna do? So then you play as Wayne, and you do like a sidekick. Like you just give everyone sweet chin music on the way through. I thought that was pretty interesting, but whatever. And again, they're going for the more realistic look in this one. Now the Super Nintendo one looks kind of like how they kind of cartoonized characters with the digitized faces. This one, man, I don't know. They're trying too hard, I think, or maybe not trying hard enough, or didn't even need to try at all. Didn't even need to try at all. But they came out with an NES game. They have a Wayne's World game. It exists. It's real. There it is, and it's pretty terrible. And but there's still that little element that makes you want to keep playing because it's Wayne's World. Like, what's the next level gonna be? What's gonna happen next? It's a terrible game. I'm gonna give it a D. Do we finally get to talk about Where's Waldo, the original one, the first one for the NES? Oh man, I can't wait. First of all, shout out to the box art. I love the box art in this because the box art is a Where's Waldo puzzle. Can you find him? I'll zoom it in right about now. Congrats if you spotted him. So when it first starts and you see Waldo kind of going to the next stage, you know, walking through, little song, little jaunty number there. So you figure that's about what Waldo's gonna look like when you get to that stage. Super wrong. You gotta find Waldo in this. Somewhere on this screen is Waldo. Yeah, it has that kind of chaos of those Where's Waldo books. There's something happening all the time. And also the other, like, you know, the little random hats, little random, you know, striped things to get your eyes off, you know, off focus or whatever. Gotta find Waldo. You know, and there he is. Okay, that kind of makes sense, but okay. And there's even like some different stages too, like where it's all dark and you have to find him in the dark, but your cursor will show up when he's running by. You have to just hit the button as soon as you can and move on from there. You know, other stages are just like those Where's Waldo books. You gotta find Waldo in this one. Gotta find him somewhere over here, you know, somewhere in the circus, somewhere in the city. Can you find him here? Interesting, interesting. And then there's a subway, which I thought was kind of fun because you have to like kind of do this puzzle along the way. Go from one side to the other. You know, there's this creep kind of chasing after you, but you have to like move these tile pieces around so you'll actually, you know, spin around and leave through the exit. That's actually kind of fun. I kind of like that kind of puzzle. You got them at the castle, little medieval stage, and then you have the rocket thing, which is a slot machine style deal where you have to hit the button and land on Waldo all 3 times. And once you do that, then you beat the game. Congratulations. So anyway, that's the easy mode. The hard mode is where it gets, let's call it impossible. Because Waldo no longer becomes Waldo of who you're looking for. And I'm not kidding. Waldo is red and white striped shirt, got the red and white beanie, jeans, blue jeans, you know, maybe the brown shoes, the cane. Look at this. This is on the harder difficulty level. So first of all, you get 2 screens to scroll back and forth from. 2 screens to scroll back and forth. Can you find Waldo in this scene? Can you find him? Can you find him? And sometimes there are people who look like Waldo, but it's totally not Waldo. And it's like, really? Now in this screen in particular, okay, yeah, that's Waldo, sure. I'll take that, right? But then this screen, where you're like, okay, I gotta find Waldo here, looking for a red and white striped shirt, looking for the beanie, the leather shoes, the cane, you know, maybe the blue jeans. Can't find him anywhere. I can go through every individual character, can't find him anywhere. Look at this. It's hard to tell because it's all zoomed in, but this character here is Waldo, according to this game. Oh, what fun. Let's go to the circus. Let's see if we can find Waldo at the circus. Again, red and white striped shirt, red and white beanie, blue jeans, leather shoes, brown shoes. But in this one, he happens to be wearing green. Nobody said that he's going to be wearing a green and white striped shirt. But once again, there's Waldo. How are you supposed to know this? I want to give this game an F so bad. I really do. However, I keep finding myself coming back to it just because it's ridiculous. It's the super ridiculous game that I keep coming back to. And this game, I'm going to give it a D because I keep coming back to it. And should point out too that Waldo moves around every time you play it. So he's never going to be in the same place twice. You know, it might be like 1 of 5 or 1 of 6 places he may be anytime you play the game, maybe any given time. One of the times in this city, he's actually like in the back of a truck, which I thought was pretty funny. But if you can find Waldo here, good on you. Yeah, that's not even close to being Waldo, but according to this game, that's him. Well, it's not the best showing for any Nintendo company, to say the least, but thank you for watching all the same. I also did rank the THQ Super Nintendo games. Make sure you check those out as well. I've ranked so many other games too, so make sure you check out the whole playlist of them. I've been doing them for about a year now. Can you believe that? We're actually almost out of Nintendo games to rank. Gonna be moving on to Super Nintendo, Genesis, TurboGrafx 16, whatever I can get my hands on anyway. Got some more videos coming your way. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.